And welcome everyone to tonight's Salt Talks. This month we're looking at the month theme for April for the Salt Talks is I'm stuck. Who do I ask? What do I do? That's the whole theme for the month. And we've had several presentations surrounding that one theme. So I want to thank you for coming tonight. For those who don't know who I am, my name is Patty Schramm. I'm the Parent Resource Trainer Coordinator for the SALT program and, SALT Talks. We do have SALT Talks, and we also have another program that just finished up called SALT Teens and Me. It was for the teenagers. And then we also have a Lunch and Learn, which we host once a month. But tonight, we are in our SALT Talks, we're going to be looking at assistive technology. Can my child live independently on their own? What is out there, and what do we need to know when we're thinking about preparing for this transition? It's hard to think about, we are, as parents, have been mainly the sole involvement in their life. But what happens, you got to look at what happens when we're gone. If they're going out on their own or if they're living with somebody else, what are some options for them in this assistive technology world? Assistive technology has come so far. It's come really far, very quickly. So we wanted to look at what is available out there, because what's there now today may be totally new from what was there a few years ago. So we wanted to touch on this topic tonight. So tonight we have the Ohio Assistive Technology Ambassadors joining us. We have George Myers, Marci, Straughter, and is Chris Cooley on? I don't see him on here tonight.
I don't see Chris yet. I'll message him and make sure he's going to join us. I think he should, for sure.
So they'll be talking about tonight about the assistive technology here and with the Ohio ambassadors. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, George. I made you co-host so you can share your screen.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you all coming out, and we're really, really excited to talk to this bunch. Young people really thinking about, transition into adulthood, working, potentially living on your own. Those are really, really, exciting things, and but they can be scary things too. So we love the opportunity to kind of talk with you all about what technology is able to do and what examples of technology are out there. And I'm really excited that we have Marci and hopefully Chris too to share their own personal experiences with you all. So what I'm going to do here is share my screen and kind of use PowerPoint as we go through. Make sure everyone can see that. There we go. All right. So just a quick word before we kind of get into the meat of the assistive tech topic is we just at least want to make sure everybody's aware of what our program is. So what is Tech Ambassadors? So we're a grant project that was commissioned by DODD about 3 years ago. I was just telling Patty before we got going here that we started right at the very beginning of 2020. And so we were affected by COVID as everyone else was. This is a project that DODD set up and intended to, provide for what they call peer mentoring. So we had to search for, find, hire, and train a group of tech ambassadors. So these are adults primarily, adults with developmental disabilities who are living on their own and who I always call passionate users of technology. So these are people who use technology in their life every day. They're very excited about what it does for them and the difference it can make for other folks. And they are here to talk about their experiences and talk to their peers. Okay, so we hold events all around the state, and we've been doing this mostly virtually through 2020 and 21. But this past year in 2022, we actually got to do some in-person events around the state. And we're really, really happy to get out there in person and actually meet folks, in person, shake their hands and talk to them and show them some examples physically about what technology these folks are using in their lives. That's just a picture of all 8 of our folks, and you're going to recognize Chris all the way to the left and Marci there third, who will talk. I'll briefly mention some of the events that we have coming up in person. So we're going to be in the Akron area on May 9th at 11 a.m. We're having a lunch and learn, so that's free lunch. I know that's not you guys' area of the state, but if anybody happens to be up in that area, or you know folks that are up there that might want to come and hang out with us for a couple of hours in Akron, that would be cool for you to tell them. And then we're going to have a really, really big event in Columbus on June 15th. This says 11. I must not have corrected that. It's actually going to be at 1 p.m. Throughout the afternoon. And we're going to be downtown at the State House, right in the middle of the square in downtown Columbus for that. We're going to have all of our tech ambassadors come from all over the state to be there in person. So if anyone wants to come and join us for that, if you're close enough, we would absolutely love to have you do that. And we may, before June 30th, actually have one more virtual event as well. I say stay tuned because you can always look at the different events that our Tech Ambassador team are doing when you go to our website, to ohiotechambassadors.org/events. You can register for these events there as well. So places where you can find us online, of course, that's our website. I just mentioned it, ohiotechambassadors.org. There you can, I already mentioned registering for events, but you can also book an ambassador. So this is, if you want to have one of our ambassador team come and speak at an event kind of like this one, or meet in person one-on-one with one of our team, you can book an ambassador there. And we always love to get feedback from folks. I'll actually bring that up at the end of our presentation today. You can do that at our website. You can register for events, as we said. And then we have a list of resources such as all of the different contact information and names of all the remote support companies in the state of Ohio, and some other neat information out there too. So we are also on social media, and we're on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a YouTube channel. And any of those 3 platforms, if you just search for Ohio Tech Ambassadors, you will find us. And our YouTube channel is a great place to look at not only recordings of other events that we've done that are usually an hour long, that's a long time, but we also have really short videos that our tech ambassadors have done with some technology in their own homes. In case you're not able to meet them in person, you can actually get a look at some of the tech they're using and them demonstrating it in their own homes out there on one of our playlists on YouTube. Okay. So to kind of segue into more of the conversation that we want to have with everybody tonight, we want to talk about supported technology. And that's a specific term that we use in all of the different places we go and people we get a chance to talk to, because it's a term that the department uses, and they have a very specific definition for what they mean when they say supportive technology. So it's made up of 2 things. So the first is assistive tech, and that's probably a familiar term to everybody. And I say here in my slide that this is equipment that assists a person with a developmental disability and activities of everyday living, just things you're doing in your life. But really, equipment might be a little bit of a misnomer. It might be more accurate to say literally anything that assists a person. And we'll give you some examples. Okay, so these can include really specialized adaptive devices. And I mentioned a couple of examples here: induction stoves or medication dispensers or med alert devices that could be made for very specific types of disabilities. So med alert devices, if I'm a seizure risk or I'm a fall risk, those are really important and helpful. Medication dispensers could be used in a variety of different situations. Induction stoves help people maybe with some physical limitations to maybe be able to cook safely when they wouldn't be able to do that. Okay. But they might not be specially adapted devices. Maybe they're just mainstream consumer devices. And I mentioned things here like all of the Alexa, Echo equipment, Google Home has their whole line of equipment, but other things like maybe lights and doorbell cameras that can be automated. I mean, these are things anybody would have in their home, right? So most of us think of these things as conveniences, right? I just don't feel like getting off of my couch and walking over to the wall and hitting the switch, right? So I just tell Alexa to do that for me. But for folks with certain types of disabilities, especially physical limitations, these can really be game changers. These types of devices that we think of as conveniences can actually be the difference between someone being able to live independently and someone who cannot. Okay. But assistive tech devices really don't even have to be electronic at all. And I mentioned some things here. These don't use electricity. They don't have batteries. Things like an adaptive fork, a rail in a bathroom or in a hallway, even things like a pillow. And if Chris joins us here in a little bit, he's a big service dog advocate. Technically, we would even consider a service dog to be assistive technology for Chris because it assists him in getting around in his community. Okay, so that's one half of supportive technology. It's assistive technologies, that all of the devices and things that we can use. The other half is remote support. So this is personal service by trained support staff that's delivered over two-way audio or video. These days, it's mostly over video. Okay, and Chris and Marci both are really, really extensive users of this service, and I know that they'll talk about how they use these services. But basically, it's this, in many cases, a lot of the same type of support that could be delivered by a DSP who was actually physically in the home. It's just delivered over two-way video instead. So what's important about this is not only that all of the staff is trained in all the same ways that a DSP would have to be trained, but they may also have access to all kinds of different equipment that might be in the home that was necessary for them to make sure that the person, while they're there by themselves in the home, is safe. So these could be things like cameras. They could be sensors of all types, heat sensors, water sensors, motion sensors. They can be security systems. They can be door locks, thermostats. If you think about that one for a second, if it were way too hot in the summer or way too cold in the winter time in a home, that's a safety concern, right? So if my remote staff has access to all of this different technology without having to stay connected on a two-way video call all day and all night, they can still have a great degree of confidence that the person in the home by themselves is safe there. All right. Now, on to what we like to call our tech stories. So this is where we're going to turn it over to Marci, and if I can get Chris connected, Chris too, and just have you two, Marci and Chris, just kind of tell the folks your tech story, your history and the part that technology has played in it. And I am going to turn it over first to Miss Marci Straughter. Take it away, Marci.
Thank you, George. Hi, my name is Marci Straughter, and I'm from Franklin County. And my tech story begins is with remote support. My mom died in 2017, so I lived with her for, half my life. And so when she passed away, I lived with family members. That didn't work out. So I decided to live with roommates. That didn't work out. So I moved in by myself, and I was scared to stay home by myself. So my service coordinator said, "How about remote support?" And I was like, "What's remote support?" So she explained to me, and then I met some remote support providers because I used to be on DD Council. And so I interviewed some. So the one that I interviewed, okay, so I was scared to stay home, so I got cameras in my home. They just look in the bedroom, not in the bedroom, but just in the kitchen, in the living room, and the remote support watches me through all the day. And then I also have a smart thermostat, because when you get remote supports, it's got to be like with your technology, it's got to be a need to get in your waiver. So it was hard for me to see the traditional lock and everything, and some things in my apartment. So with the thermostat was really, really small. It's hard for me to see small things. So my service coordinator and my remote support provider, we all talked, and we decided one of the best things to get me was a smart thermostat. And I can control that from on the wall, and I can also control it through my phone. Now, it's hard for me to open up a door with a key because my left hand is weak. So I had to go talk to my service coordinator again. And so she made an approval to get me a smart lock. Now it's called August, and I can lock it and unlock it from my phone. It's very helpful. Don't need no keys or anything. And I also have a Facebook portal, which I can talk to my Facebook friends and my remote support providers. I can talk to them on video screen. And it really helps because I live by myself and I was scared to stay alone. So talking to them when I'm bored or something like that, it really helps me. And then I also have a Ring doorbell, and I can see who's at my door. If I don't want to answer it, don't know, just put my iPad back on and just listen to my music. And then I also have the Alexa, which I call my little A word because she's nosy. And so she helps me with reminders what I have to go through for today, and recipes, time. I can listen to music while I'm cooking because I love to cook. And I also have smart lights. So I can, like George was telling you about the lights, I can tell my lights to like cut on and off. And that's really helpful. And I have a smart thermostat. Well, the smart smoke detector. That's really, really cool. And it can, with the smart smoke detector, if something is smoking, or even if it's real sensitive, it'll tell you where it's coming from. And I felt safe because, like, it was my first time living on my own. So these technologies, they really helped me. And having them in my home, I call it my little smart home. And having all these, I have staff, but they leave. They only stay a little bit of time. But then after they leave, I have remote support. Like, I can talk to my friends, but I know on the safety hand that my remote support has my back through the camera, through my portal. If I need help with my thermostat or my lock, they can unlock my doors. They can help me with my thermostat. They help you like with supports and things like that if you need to talk. So having remote support in these technologies has changed my life and made it better, and it's made me feel more independently, even though I do have staff.
That's awesome, Marci. Quick question for you. Have you ever had your smoke detector go off before?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
So was it a real fire or was it something else?
No, it was sensitive because I was making Chinese food and it just came on. And then
Right.
my remote support provider calls and says, "What are you burning?" I was like, "I'm not burning anything. It's sensitive." So we
Right.
opened up the door, and it can be sensitive, but it's really
Okay.
cool.
But you know what?
It's
We'd
real
probably
cool to
rather have
I
it
think
be
it's better. I think it's better than the traditional smoke alarm.
probably better for it to be a little too sensitive than not sensitive enough.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting, rather than the fire department being called immediately or a 911 call happening, what happened is your remote support staff was notified and they immediately contacted you to figure out whether or not we had a real need to make a 911 call or have the fire department come out. Right. So you probably saved a lot of hassle there. You didn't have the fire truck show up at your place.
Yes.
All right, that's great. One more little thing I wanted to make sure I asked Marci here, because I know you've talked about this before. You have a camera that is inside your place, right? In the common area of your apartment.
Yes.
So I know there's some people who have questions about whether or not that would be a good idea. And it's very, very optional. There's all kinds of folks that don't have cameras indoors. Why don't you share with everyone what you've shared with me about why you wanted to have that camera, how it's a good thing for you?
Well, how it came for me is I was scared to stay home by myself when my mom was there. And when she would leave, I would beg her, "Don't leave me. How long are you going to be gone?" And so when she passed away and I moved in by myself, I was nervous. So with the cameras and my remote support there, I feel like there's somebody there with me and I'm not alone. And if I need help, I know they have my back and they're watching over me.
All right, that is great.
I call them my little safe angels.
There you go. There you go. All right, now I believe that Chris Cooley has joined us. He messaged me and said that he is on here. So Chris, if you're with us, feel free to go ahead and just tell your tech story now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. Great.
Here I am.
Take it away, Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Cooley. I am from Straughter County, Ohio, which is Portsmouth, Ohio, south of Columbus, Ohio. I know that was a lot in one sentence, but I was living in Columbus, Ohio for a while on my own. I'm always a big advocate for people with disabilities, speaking up when I see something that needs to be changed for access and accessibility. Big service dog, advocator for service dogs and access for that. So I've been pretty big in the community for that here in Ohio, and then almost everywhere, but mainly here in Ohio. I was living in Columbus for a while, and I started, I was enjoying my life, and I was able to go to college and all that on my own, and then I started getting out because I wanted to make friends, and I thought, if I go here and I hide my disabilities, I'll make friends. If I went here and hide my disabilities, I would make friends. And so it just kept going on like that for a while until my counselor told me, "Chris, you're lying to yourself when you're not showing your cane or your a guide dog for the blind. And so my counselor kind of helped me get out there in the community, and be able to see, use my dog and my cane. And I started making friends. I made a lot of good friends, but the last couple years ago, I made some friends that wasn't really healthy friends. And I they started taking advantage and started you know, moving in on me and things like that, and doing things they shouldn't be doing. And so I wasn't really seeing it, but my other friends that were true friends were trying to get me away from it and pull me out of it. So finally we got away from it, and I moved back to Portsmouth, Ohio, with my family and my other friends that are true friends. And so I stayed with my mom for a while just to get my head back together, because of having to move away and give up a lot of things, and it was a lot to deal with. And I had to go back to my live with my mom for a while because I didn't have nowhere else to go. And as I was living with my mom, and I really wanted to get back out on my own, but I was scared and I was worried about getting back out there on my own because of what happened in Columbus may happen here. That people in Columbus may see where I am and come and try to take advantage of it again. And so I finally found me a house, and I moved in, and my SSA came and said, Chris, we have a new program in Straughter County. You'll be the first that will have this in your home, here in Straughter County. And he said it was a remote support team. And I said, yeah, I'll try it out and see what, they have to say. So they came to my house and they talked to me about cameras. They talked to me about, the tablet and remote support tablet, and a GPS tracker. And, I was sitting there thinking, I don't want people looking in on me. I don't want people knowing what I'm doing 24 hours, 7 days a week. But I also even, I talk to myself a lot. Um, I, I ask myself a question: do you want to go back and live with your mom, or do you really want to be independent? And I said, I really want to be independent. And so I took that remote support team provider up on their offer, and they came in. They put a doorbell camera on my front door, on my back door, and then we put a camera in the kitchen, and then they hooked up a alarm clock that shakes the bed that helps me be able to hear my alarm going off. And also I do have a smart smoke detector, and then I also have another bed vibrator that actually goes off if it detects smoke. And so they hooked it all up, and I was able I was able to lay down and be able to go to sleep for 6 hours, for about 6 to 9 hours that night, and not have to worry about nothing, because I knew the remote support team had my back. They were my eyes, they were my ears, because I'm legally deaf and legally blind, so I don't see and hear everything that goes on around my outside. And so I was able to get the first night without worrying about anybody coming around, doing anything that may be bad. They were there to help me be my eyes and ears. And remote support, the camera in the kitchen, they can help me be able to see and read things that I may not be able to see and read. They can help me turn on my stove, and they can help me turn on my washer and dryer. And with the tablet, they have a special tablet with their app on it. They could call me. I have them calling me just to check in, to talk to me 3 times a day. the morning time, they remind me to take my medicine. And, just being there as a friend and being there as a provider, just same as I would have somebody in my house. They're there, um, they can't do everything, but they could do most. The things that they can't do, my SSA can help me with that, and get me help with that. And so I really enjoy it because when they call me, we talk about what my day's going to be, and how am I going to do it all throughout the day, and their attitude and their spirit, I can feel their attitude, because their attitude is happy, exciting, and when I feel that, it makes me happy and excited. And not only remote support there to kind of get me going through the day and keep me going through the day. They're there as a friend. If I get down and depressed, I could call them and just talk to them, and we talk it out. If it's something that needs to be dealt with, they could call. They'll call my list of people. They'll ask me, Chris, do you want us to call your people and have them to come and sit with you or talk with you? It's all about me. It's not about them. It's all about me. And remote support, they have my ISP, and they know if they have to call the emergency services, they know what to tell them, and they know a lot about me. And also the cameras on the outside, where they can take a picture and put the picture inside the camera of somebody that I don't want around my house. If it's somebody that came from Columbus, I could say I don't want them. I don't want to be around them. They could take a picture and put it in there. And every time that person steps on my porch, that picture will pop up and identify to the remote support team. It'll send a signal, and then they can take care of it from there without me having to open my door or unlock it. And they do have appended, if you ever see those commercials on TV that talks about, I'm falling in the shower and I need help, or falling in the park and need help. Well, they also have a button just like that. But this button is not just an emergency button. I could push it and talk to them. I could push it if I walk down the wrong road. If I take the wrong turn and I don't know where I am, I could just push it and they could GPS it and help me get back to where I want to be, and help me get back to safety and talk to me until I get there. And they are there just to be that friend. If there is emergency, they can help me with that, if it's necessary. And always, if they can't find where I am, then they could call my list of people or ask me who do you want us to call, and I have that choice to tell them, who to call. And so remote support's been great to me. And um, I use my guide dog from Pilot Dogs in Columbus a lot, because that's one of my ways of getting around. And that's a very good tool that I have to be independent, to get in and out of my house. And so I really do enjoy the remote support team. And I also have one more thing I will talk about real quick. And I think this is a cool idea for folks that are, and I hear a lot of people say, well, what if my individual has autism? What if an individual has, behavior issues? Remote support team has an IPS or IPS to be able to, know what's going on, and the interactions of that individual and them can get it under control. They know how to do it. And so this little tool is a pen. It's called Pen Friend. You can find it on Amazon. I can't find a thingy, but it's Pen friend, and it's a really cool pen. It's a really pen, and can you guys see this?
We can only see it if you hold it in front of your face, Chris. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, if I hold it in front of my face.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a little pen, and people with autism, nonverbal, I like it, and it'll keep you safe. Like say if I get up in the morning and I want to go to the store and buy stuff. Well, my remote support team, I could turn this on, and there's little stickers on this card, and you don't have to throw these away. It's worth your money. This little tool is worth your money, and you don't have to replace it other than the batteries. And so I use this, my remote support. I know you'll hear my voice on it, but hear me going my list. This is my list. My remote support or my friends or somebody can help me record a list of things. And I could go on my own and have and go to the store and do things on my own. So here's the
I need Pepsi and coffee.
and I have, you know,
Hi, my name is Peter. Can you please help me find things on my list?
I can have tell the driver, let's see.
Driver, take me to Kroger.
Driver, take me to Kroger. That way, this little pen can tell the driver what I want. And I have that list to be able to, touch it, and it'll tell the driver what I want. And if I go into the store, I do have a sticker, but I kind of misplaced it here. But it actually, I can record on it and ask the person at the store, can you help me find the things on my list? If I don't understand what I'm looking for and I have a list, then that person at the store can help me find things on my list. And then I could get, after done shopping, I could get back in the car with the cab driver or the bus driver and use this little pen and tell them where I want to go. And this is a little neat pen. You could use it for medication. You can use it to, for labeling your stoves or washer and dryer or anything that you may have a hard time doing. I recommended this to the police department because number one, how the police department will come to your home, and if I have a bad behavior and I like to listen to disco music. Well, if they had this and had this little pen and the little sticker with disco music recorded on it, then they could just hand it to me and be able to play the disco music while I'm holding the pen. It'll play the disco music as much as they have on there, and it'll calm me down. And so it's those little things that matter. A lot of other people may think, oh, well, that's silly, but to us, it's something important, and it really helps us to be that independent.
All right. Awesome, Chris. Thank you. So just a couple of little follow-ups with you, Chris, just to make sure that everybody understands this. So the pen that Chris was talking about is a piece of assistive technology that is not connected to his remote support service. Is that right, Chris?
That is right, but I can use it and they can help me use it.
Yeah.
It's not connected, but I had to buy it. I had to buy it on my own
Right.
with my waiver, but then the remote support team can help me use it.
Right. So for example, they could help a nonverbal person in a home record messages on that over a two-way video or audio conversation. Right. So I think that's what Chris was trying to say.
Right.
Now, the handheld device that he was showing us is a device that is connected to his remote support service. Right. So he was pointing this out. If he's out somewhere and he's lost, or if he literally did fall and was having trouble getting up or whatever, and he pushes the button, it's not going to be some random group of people like some of the devices that you see. It's actually going to be the same remote support staff that he would be talking to in his home. So these are people who have his ISP, they know him, they know all about him. And that's a much better solution
The
than some of
George,
those types of devices.
the one thing about this device that we'll talk about right now is that if I get out somewhere and nobody can find me, they could turn the GPS on and get a good idea where I am.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So what we want to do here is make sure that we, first of all, take questions that anybody has right now, and feel free if you want to ask a generic question that has to do with remote support or assisted tech. I might be able to handle that. If you have a question specifically for Marci or specifically for Chris about their home environment, any of the technologies they use, feel free to ask those. And I am not actually, okay, here we go. Here's our chat.
I had added out there that they could add their questions to the chat.
Yeah, great.
But if someone has a question, you can feel free to unmute if you want and ask the question for any of the three. I think what Chris said was a great idea about the recording and with the police or emergency. I think that is a great idea.
Yeah, and by the way, there are also ways that you can use a smartphone to accomplish some of what Chris was describing, even without buying that little device. But that device is well under $100. So pretty reasonably priced. Now, I'll tell you what, let's do, and feel free, go ahead if you have questions, type them in, or you know, just speak up and ask if you'd like. There was a list of questions that Patty sent over for us, maybe just to kind of get the discussion going, or because these are representative questions. You know, I think that she's probably heard from families as they're talked about remote support. So I'm going to go ahead just through these. If these jog another question in your mind, feel free to ask. And hopefully you have a pretty decent feel at this point for this first question, which is kind of how does assistive technology work in the home? So if it's something that is connected to the remote support, then obviously, you know, that's a collaborative thing. The remote support folks on the other side of the two-way video conversation can talk to you through some of these devices. They have access to some of the devices like Marci was talking about. So they have access to her thermostat. We didn't point this out specifically, but they have access to her door lock, right? So Marci, let's say, was out and about and couldn't remember if she locked her door, right? She can actually contact her remote support staff. They can check and find out if the door is locked, and they can actually lock it for her if it turned out that she did forget, right? Let me just pause for a quick second in case there was something really specific about this question that anyone felt like they wanted to kind of ask a follow-up on.
How well, question and it might tie into another question later on, but either for Marci or Chris, just adjusting the time that to adjust to having a remote technology or, you know, assistive technology, either one, just that adjustment period. Did it take you long to learn it? Was it a struggle, or did you like pick it up pretty quick? There was I mean, you talked about a lot of different things, and it seems like a lot going on all at once. So I just wondered if you took it in steps or if it came easy.
I took it in steps. I caught it on. It took me a day or two, but then my remote support provider showed me how to do it, and then I remembered it in my head, and I remembered how to call remote support. And so whenever my in-home staff that comes and helps me in the home, since my remote support provider showed me how to do it. So he doesn't have to come out here. I show them how to do it and how I work it. So I train them on it. So when they come in my home, they know how to work it and what I do when I call remote support.
Yeah, it's really funny. The number of times over the past few years when I'll be in a quick conversation with Marci and she'll be like, well, I've got to go. I've got a new provider staff coming over. I have to train them. But I do think it's also really important to point out that it is the responsibility of the remote support company who's coming out to talk to people in the home about what technologies are available for them. First of all, it's really going to be everybody on that whole team, okay? Family members, SSA, maybe other provider staff, other advocates. All of those folks are going to have a conversation together about which specific technologies we think are appropriate and helpful for this person in this specific home. And that list of things is going to be different for everybody. But once that's decided on, the remote support company comes out and they install it all, and they will train not just the person who's living in the home, but any family that they expect to be over, provider staff that may be over, any support person that may be visiting in that home. Everybody's going to know how to use that equipment because the remote support company is going to train them.
I know it only took me a couple weeks to get used to it. I got used to it quickly because there was a reason I needed or wanted it, so I could stay in my home independently. And the one thing to remember, remote support, they did come to my house multiple times to show me different things in different ways to use it. My SSA stayed on top of it, and he came probably once a week just to make sure everything's going pretty well. And one question that a lot of folks ask, what if it breaks? Well, they will come and the remote support team will come and fix it. They'll fix it, change the battery, replace it. And that you don't have to worry about.
Right, that's part of what you're paying for with that service for sure.
Yeah. And also when you do get your remote support, check in with your landlord or your renting office to see if you can have it.
Yeah, that's a really important thing, right? Some of the devices Marci uses specifically, like a thermostat, they had to take the old thermostat that was in the apartment building out for her to use hers, and they had to switch out the door lock on the front door. So she had to talk to the folks that she rents the apartment from to make sure that that was okay with them. And it worked out that it was.
Looks like there is a question out there from Karen's group. Can you see that, George? Or
well, here, let me bring it up.
I can read it too.
How do you teach a young person to call 911? There's a way to actually practice doing this. Well, absolutely, there are ways. I will say this, not only can you program the phone that the person has, assuming they have a phone, right? Smartphones can be programmed so there's just a single button that you can touch and 911 will be called. So it depends on the person in the home if they are able to do that. That's pretty easy. But many of the remote support companies also have ways in these tablets that may be located in different places in the home where there's a button right on the tablet that they could walk up and touch if they need to call 911. There are individual just buttons that you can have located throughout a home. And sometimes they may be located in specific areas where there's safety issues, like in a bathroom, for example, or even in a bedroom. It's just a button, and all they have to do is touch it. And their remote staff will be called, and the staff, if they assess that they've got a problem, can reach 911 for those folks.
You can also, they have sensors up in the corners of every room, and they can see this movement. They can't see the person, but they can see the movement. I know there's been times that I've went to the bathroom and I was there for a while, and they didn't see any more movement through the house other than the bathroom. They were able to turn on the camera, and or my geocom little button that we were talking about, and call me on in and say, hey, are you okay? They have alerts that will come to them automatically, and they would know that something is not normal. And then Alexa does, well, I mean, if you say Alexa, call 911, she'll
Right.
do that too.
Yeah. So feel free to ask a follow-up on 911 if we didn't address what you were asking about specifically there, but hopefully
And
that's
George,
a
it
good
also,
answer.
and then it also, like if your power goes out, you can call your remote support provider, and they have like all the information, and then they'll call the company that you use and say, hey, it's power, because this happened to me a couple of weeks ago. My power went out, so I called my remote
Right.
support provider on my portal, and I said, my lights went out. He was like, let's check what's going on in your area. So he called them, and they said, there's a power outage. It'll be back on at 9 o'clock. And so it made me feel safe.
Right. Now, let's point out that's a really important question that a lot of people have. What happens if the power goes out? What happens, even sometimes, what happens if internet goes out? Because as you might imagine, some of this equipment we're talking about uses internet in the home. Well, the very first thing is remote support staff is immediately aware whenever they're disconnected from the home, whether it's from an internet outage or a power outage. And they may not wait for you to call them. In fact, they probably won't. So each remote support company may do this a little bit differently. In Marci's case, she actually has a portal where she could still do two-way video even without power. Okay. It may come down to just a cell phone and then making a phone call to you on the cell. But each remote support provider may have a slightly different way of making sure that they can get a hold of you or you can get a hold of them if the either the internet goes out or the power goes out. And many of the devices in the home can be battery operated for, they have what's called a battery backup that can power these devices for a certain number of hours until the power comes back on. Let's look at this next question here. Do people who use remote technology always live alone, or are some living with peers? That's a great question. Now, Marci and Chris do both live alone. But there are many, many folks who use this service who do live with roommates. Okay. Now that's a little bit more.
When I first started out, I lived with a roommate.
Now okay, I forgot about that. You're right. So was your roommate also receiving remote support at that point, Marci?
Yes, we were with the same company.
Okay. Now that makes it easy, right? But there are situations where maybe one of the roommates might want to take advantage of remote support and the other person doesn't need it, right?
Oh, my roommate was like that.
That could be for a variety of reasons. It could be just because they don't feel like they need it at all and they're pretty independent. It could be because they have staff that's almost there 24/7, and so they don't need remote support for that reason. So there do need to be discussions between the roommates about which equipment gets located in the home, where it is. So it's obviously important to the roommate, for example, if we're going to locate a camera in a common area, that other person shares. So it really just is, it's a conversation that all of the roommates need to have. And we're going to arrive at a list of equipment and locations for that equipment that kind of works for everybody who's living there. That's a great question. So I went ahead and put the next three up here. What's available, how's it funded, and is it user-friendly? So we've given you a pretty decent list of different examples of types of equipment that could be located. And feel free if you've got questions about specific things. I mentioned very briefly things like motion sensors, things like heat sensors, right? Perfect example for those two things. A motion sensor can be a great way to know when someone's moving around in a home if that person doesn't want a camera, right? We have door sensors that can tell you whether a door is open or closed. So if those are used on interior doors in the home, you know, that plus motion sensors can really give you a good idea without having to have a camera of where a person might be moving about. There's a thing called an occupancy sensor that you could locate under the cushions on a couch or a chair or under a mattress that can tell you when a person is sitting down or a person's in bed. You know, there's just tons and tons of things. Heat sensors are great in a kitchen next to a stove, for example, to make sure we didn't leave the stove on accidentally. There are water sensors that you can locate in kitchens or bathrooms that could alert you right away if something happens, like a toilet overflowing that could cause a lot of water damage. The list just goes on and on and on, and new things become available all the time.
And if you have seizures, or you're an individual that likes to get up and take a long night walk, they do have watches and necklaces that will detect the seizures, will detect the behavior happening at night, and it'll send the signal to the remote support, and the remote support can check in on the sensors to see if there's any movement, and also call and see what's going on. Just a friendly check-in. And also, I had somebody ask me, well, what about if somebody's totally deaf and blind, or legally blind and legally deaf? There is a group out there called I Can Connect. They help give out, you know, for folks that are hearing and vision impaired, equipment to help them live independent in their own home.
Right. Great example. So hopefully we've answered the question about whether or not the stuff is user-friendly. I think both Marci and Chris would tell you that it is. And again, you know, the training that goes along with it should really go a long way in terms of helping people feel comfortable with using equipment. How is it funded is something we haven't talked a whole lot about. I know Chris and Marci, I think, both mentioned waivers, and that is the primary way that much of this, both equipment and the service, are funded for almost everybody in the state of Ohio that uses those. So feel free to ask follow-ups about that. It's not impossible that there could be certain county boards that might have a little bit of funding for special use that that isn't a waiver. I've heard of people using maybe respite funds to buy inexpensive devices that would fall into the category of assistive tech.
And sometimes the Lions Club, they have a program. Certain ones will have a program that can help so much a year.
That's great. One really important thing to consider, even if you are thinking about buying equipment that does not fall into the category of remote support. So let's just say you wanted to get an Amazon Echo Dot. So those things cost $50, right? And that's not an extra $50 that you have. The decision that you want to think through is, do I spend $50 on that thing and just buy it directly from Amazon? Do I wait for a sale and see if I can get it for 30, which around Thanksgiving time you can, and just buy it and manage it myself? Or would I want to pay one of these companies that provides assistive tech and remote support, even if this device is not going to be connected to a remote support service? These companies still, in many cases, will help you buy equipment, bring it out, set it up, and train you on how to use it. Now, it's not going to cost $50 if you do that, right? If you pay one of the companies in Ohio that's responsible for that, maybe it costs $80 or $90, because with that, you're getting the training, you're getting the guarantee that if it breaks, they'll replace it. Those things. So those are important decisions on funding. I'm going to just keep going with some more of these questions that were in our list here. And you guys feel free to just keep putting questions in the chat or asking them if you want to.
Just a question. You mentioned like the different, so are they just handled like a provider then? Like you would go to as a parent, I'd go to my SSA or your county board and say, hey, we're looking at assistive technology. And then from there, they would get a list of people in the area, or was that something that just works through the county board works through you to find the providers in the area, or how does that all come about?
Well, if you're asking about remote support and assistive tech, one thing is that there are maybe 12 companies in the state of Ohio that provide remote support. I believe all of them work all across the state. It may be that a couple of the smaller ones possibly only reach certain parts of the state. The vast majority of them, though, I know do work all across the state. By the way, this is one of the things you can see at ohiotechambassadors.org. If you go to our resources page, it'll list all the remote support companies, their contact information, their phone numbers, their emails, and their websites, so that you can check all this out.
I know.
It's always a great idea for the SSA to be aware that you are looking at this stuff. Even if they don't consider themselves to be techie people, they should be able to connect you, with some people that they probably know who are reps in your area for some of these companies.
Well, I know here in Straughter County, SSA service coordinators will give you the option to talk to different providers. So therefore, they have the list, and they'll tell you who they are. And maybe this week we'll talk with George about his tech. Next week we'll talk to Marci. Next week we'll talk to Chris and see which one I like. And which one that would work better for me. It's not always, that's the name I hear all the time. I hear George's name all the time. So he must be really good, which he might not have everything that I like. So other companies might be better. So it's always good to work with your SSA and have that option.
Yeah, absolutely. One important thing in terms of choosing a remote support provider that is really good for people to know. We haven't talked about this specifically yet tonight, but it should be, I'm sure if all of you who are family members or parents, you have to be thinking about this. If the people who are providing the remote support are hours and hours away, what happens if we need somebody to come to the home? So we always have to have a local, what we call backup support available. And that can happen in two different ways. The first is what we call paid backup support. So this is going to be a local homemaker personal care provider agency in your area. Okay. So it may be a provider agency that you already do some work with. Maybe folks are already coming out to the home to provide certain types of services, and it would be natural for you to use them as your backup service. In some cases, though, it may be a completely different provider that you haven't worked with before. But here's the important point about doing paid backup. When you do that, it's actually the HPC agency provider that chooses the remote support company. Okay. So that's going to be one of the questions you want to deal with up front. Are we going to be in a paid backup situation? The other way you can go is what's called natural supports, right? So if there are family members, friends, or other people who live very close and they agree to be sort of on call, right? If something happens, it's going to be their phone number that the remote support provider has in a list to call. That's called unpaid backup. And when you have that situation, it's the individual and the family that pick the remote support provider themselves. Okay. So that's just a kind of a logistical thing that it's good to know. Let's see. Privacy. I think we probably touched on a few different things here. Marci and Chris, you guys both feel as though you have plenty of privacy in your homes, right?
Yeah.
I know. I have the camera in my kitchen, but they don't normally turn it on unless they don't see a movement in the house for a very long time. If they notice that I'm not moving around, they might click it on and to call out my name. Hey, Chris, are you okay? But other than that, I have to ask them to turn that camera on. And the good thing about it is that my backdoor camera, they don't normally watch it. If I'm going to go out and sit with friends and I don't want to be bothered by somebody watching me, I can ask them to not to turn that camera on, and they can, not do that. And then I usually use that backdoor camera just when I'm doing a bonfire. Or I'm using my barbecue grill. They can watch with that camera. They can watch me and kind of just make sure things don't get out of hand. And if I don't see something that's getting out of hand, they can, speak up and say, hey, Chris, you might want to move over a little bit or do this or do that to be safe. So privacy is your choice.
Good. Now,
Yes.
Marci, talk about your camera and where it is.
Okay, my camera is like on my wall, but my remote support provider built it in. So it faces like my living room into my kitchen. Now it's turned off some at some times, but mostly it's on. Like one time my remote support provider didn't see no movement. So she called me and she was like, where are you? I was like, I'm at a hotel at a meeting. I left at 6 o'clock this morning. She didn't see me, so she thought I was at home. I said, but I'm safe though. But one thing that I do with my remote support provider is now they're using self-directed transportation. And so now I ride on lifts. So I wasn't used to doing that. So what I do is I call my remote support provider. I have it because they have a Facebook app, and talk to them while I'm in there. And then when I get out, and if I hang up from, I said I made it into the building, because then I feel safe. So every time I'm in a lift, I call my remote support on Messenger.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? In Chris's example, he already pointed out how the device he can take out with him, has GPS and everything. And Marci's provider has worked it out where they actually use Facebook Messenger on her phone so that she can talk to them in a lift or a cab or something like that. So, we often think of remote support just being delivered at home, but there are ways where it's expanded to help folks be supported when they're out in their communities.
I have used my GPS in a cab in Columbus, where I asked remote support to be there with me, and they helped me because they saw where the cab was going, and he was going the long way, and passed up my place 2 or 3 times, the place I was going to, and they were able to catch him at it and be able to tell him, hey, you missed, you need to turn around and go back the other way.
Yeah. Great. Well, here's another question. Can we talk to someone directly when a situation arises? Hopefully you've heard enough stories to know the answer to that one. Yes, folks are available in a significant variety of ways, right? From tablets, over phones, over the handheld devices we were talking about, or even some of this home automation equipment, things like Amazon Alexa or Google Home. So here's kind of the big one. And we've mentioned one of the things that's not in this list, but let's just read through this. Unexpected situations, right? What happens when strangers come to the door, if someone left a kitchen stove on, someone left the doors unlocked, taking meds, right? A couple of these we've actually sort of mentioned, right? Like leaving the stove on, you know, if we have a heat sensor
I've
by
done
our
that.
stove, we can know when that happens. And there is equipment that you can connect to a stove that will automatically turn it off for you, even without the remote support having to get in touch with folks. Chris mentioned strangers coming to the door, you know, and both Chris and Marci have doorbell cameras. And Chris mentioned specifically facial recognition, which is a part of some of the equipment that's out there these days, you know, that can alert staff if someone's coming to the door that we know we don't want there. You know, Marci hasn't brought this one up yet, but she has a med minder that helps her remember to take medications. Why don't you take a second and talk about that, Marci?
Yeah, I have a med minder. I've had so many other things to talk about. But the med minder, I needed like a med minder, like to help me stay on task and everything, because I'm like all on the go all the time. So so I will keep on track and everything. So once again, call my remote support provider and my service coordinator. And they think of this plan. So MedMinder Pharmacy, it is not located in Ohio, but what they do is they send you this machine and it lights up like a disco ball and it says, Marci, it's time to take your medicine. And it just lights up. And so how you get you don't have to go like to Walgreens or CVS. They have their own pharmacy and they send you it in the mail.
Right. Now, in your case, Marci, you're getting that medication in the mail. Are you loading up the medicine into the machine yourself, or are you having someone come over and help you with that?
Someone helps me with it.
Right. So if you've never heard of one of these or seen them, it could be a box. You know, some of them are oriented like in a wheel where they turn and they can dispense medication, just specific medication at a specific time of day. So in Marci's case, she's not at risk to take the wrong thing or, you know, not take her medication. She knows, you know, what she needs to take and when. It's just a simple reminder. So her box is not locked. You could have situations where folks, maybe there would be a risk of folks taking the pills out and changing them around or whatever, where the box is locked.
I used to have it locked, but it kept on. I had to keep on calling the remote support provider because it wouldn't open.
Right.
So finally we had a team meeting in my team. We said, you don't need it locked.
Exactly. Right. And hopefully what you're hearing in this specific case, but really across the board here, there are lots and lots of choices, and what gets decided on not only is custom to that individual person, but just like Marci just said, you know, the initial set of technologies that get chosen and the way that they're set up is not a permanent choice. These things can be reviewed, updated, changed later. I've had many situations I've heard of where folks maybe took a technology out of a home because it really wasn't working in the way that everyone thought it was. Maybe we see how well a person does with a particular technology and we decide to add on something else that's related to that later, you know, as we see that, you know, what a good job they're doing. Let's see.
Looks like there's another question for you there.
Specific tech items to help with time management.
Yeah, a lot of the providers are now making boards and different little tasks on that board, and having the support team, when they call in, the support team calls in to be able to provide help them, hey, you got that red one. Did you do that today? Or, have you done it yet? And those kind of things. But also, I find that Alexa is a good choice in keeping it because I mean, I'll tell Alexa, hey, because I know I won't be able to remember something sometimes. So I'll say, hey, Alexa, remind me when it's time to go out the door at 2 o'clock, or remind me to do this. And then, I have her there, telling me when it's time to do something.
Yeah, that's one great example. There are others. There are all kinds of apps that can be configured on a phone or a tablet that can deliver reminders. In some cases, it can be a call from a remote support staff to talk to a person in a home at a scheduled time of day. That's really a very, very common thing for there to be scheduled calls
I get
for a variety of things. Both of y'all do, right?
I get scheduled calls, like if I have a Zoom meeting or I'm going out on a business trip or something. My remote support provider will call me. The night person will put on my board that I need to be waked up at 10 o'clock.
Great. And then Chris,
like that, yeah.
What do they call you on a schedule for?
Let's just say that I need to, tomorrow I'm going to that health fair, provider fair. So I will ask them tonight when they call me at night to remind me to take my medicine at 9 o'clock. I will ask them to call me early in the morning before 7 to make sure I'm up and ready. And what they'll do is they'll call me and tell me, hey, it's time to get up and get ready for your trip or your appointment. And then they'll call me back a little bit later and say, hey, are you really up and ready? Or they can watch the sensor. They can see if I'm up. If I'm not up, they call the heck out of me until I do get up. and I like it because it keeps me focused.
Yeah, that's great. And you guys mentioned special situations, which I wasn't even thinking about, right? Like you can, say, hey, I've got this special situation where I'm leaving town, or I've got to, do something I don't normally do. But we also have situations where there are scheduled calls that happen every day. There's a pre-agreed upon purpose for that call.
Well, I get a call. Me and my SSA, I get to make the schedule if because I'm able to. My SSA writes it down, call me at 8 o'clock in the morning, check in on me, remind me to turn the coffee pot on, or they can, they'll remind me to take my medicine. They'll also sit there and watch me take my medicine. If that's requested, they'll watch me take that medicine. And sometimes I'll get new medicine that I'll forget that I have to take it, and they'll watch me take it, make sure I take that so I don't forget it, because it's important. Like antibiotics, it's not really in your pill box or in a packet. It's just something that just came out of nowhere. So they'll help watch that. Then at noontime, they'll just call me just to see how I'm doing, what I'm doing, and what kind of cool things that I got myself into. And then at 5 o'clock, the same thing as noontime. And then at 9 o'clock, they call me to let me know, make sure you lock your doors, charge your tablet, charge your phone, make sure you have your button with you when you go to bed, and take your medicine. And so those are reminders, and they can see at the sensor that the doors are not open, or not shut or locked. They could call me back and say, hey, did you forget to unlock or turn on, shut your door and lock in? And there's been times that I've walked out and took a walk and left my back multiple times, left my back door wide open. and thought I shut it, but my remote support saw it and they kept the camera on until I finally got back home.
Great
To
example.
make sure things are safe.
Awesome. Any other questions that folks have?
Yeah, feel free to add it to the chat or just ask. Karen, your group, is there any more questions is there any other questions from your group? Doesn't look like any other questions at this point.
All right. Well, if I do want to point one quick thing out here, we would love to have your feedback on this session. You can visit our website and there's a big blue feedback button that looks like the one on the screen here at every single page of our website at ohiotechambassadors.org. Anyone who would, if you don't mind, maybe just take a very quick second to just, answer. I think there's maybe 4, 5 questions tops. We would love that. Oh, here's a question. Using a smartphone as a vibrating time management tool. Absolutely. Yeah, you could make any smartphone do that. The built-in calendars all come with reminders. And if you have vibration built in as one of the things that happens when the reminder hits, then you would accomplish exactly what you're talking about right there.
I do that with my phone. I even have because I don't hear my phone ringing. I also have it vibrating, and then it also flash. It drives people crazy. But I'll be sitting in church and they're saying your phone's flashing. Well, I can't hear it. So and then the other reminders and stuff like that, I do have that set on the vibration.
Excellent example. Wow,
George,
we can hang on for another minute. Go ahead, Marci.
Like with me, I use my time tree calendar, and it's an app on the phone, and I download it, and all the stuff that I have going on, I put in there, and so it does a notification thing and lets me know, hey, you got a meeting tomorrow.
And if you wanted those things to be delivered with a vibrating tone,
it has. Sometimes it will have a vibrating. You got to put something on there, but mine it just lights up.
Okay. Wonderful. We can hang out in a minute if folks have other questions.
Yeah, great information. Marci and Chris, you guys gave a lot of great examples, of answering a lot of those questions that we had. And I'm sure there's going to be, as we go on, and start looking at this, I'm sure there'll be more questions that come up. And thank you, George. I'm going to stop the recording so we can open up a lot more information, or if anybody has a discussion they just want to open up and ask us, fine. But 1 second while I stop the recording. And again, thank you, George and Marci and Chris, for all the information you shared with us tonight. So 1 second.